12th, 2020. First order of business is approval of the agenda. If there are there any changes or additions? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Gonzalez. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries and the agenda is adopted. Moving to approval of the November 28th, 2022 Transportation Committee meetings. Any changes or additions to the minutes? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Next, we actually have a couple of people here who would like to address the committee. I'll call you up, and if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and give each of you approximately 3 minutes to speak. The first is Kurt Anderson. Yep. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Kurt Anderson. I'm a mechanic out of South Garage, and I'm also executive board member for South Garage for ATU 1005. I'm here tonight to speak about our short staffing at Metro Transit and the maintenance division. Of course, all of us are short-staffed, but it's bad enough in the maintenance department that we actually had to cut back jobs in order to populate all shifts in all garages. We knew that was going to happen, but a lot of this has to do with the North Loop garage, so we have to do another pick. The problem is that all the work that was cut was premium days off. So premium days off is weekends for day shift and second shift, and then Friday and Saturday for third shift. But also a bunch of the jobs were changed around, and so, you know, our understanding was when these jobs were pulled back that they would actually be bringing them back as they're hiring. But that isn't the case. A lot of the jobs have actually changed. So one job in particular at South Garage used to have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. It was a 10-hour shift. Now it has Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday off. Who would want that? You know, I just don't understand why this is done. Also, a lot of them have, the jobs have changed to be titled more generalized. We used to pick our work, and now they're generalizing things to the point where management is going to be picking our work. They're going to just be telling us what you're going to do. This is actually happening throughout Metro Transit, not just in bus maintenance, but in heavy rail, light rail, and engineering and facilities. So we really think that this is going to negatively impact Metro Transit's ability to hire and retain mechanics and other staff. And we want to have our picked work back with the primary job description and a percentage minimum of premium days off equal to the 2021 pick. I think that if we don't make this change, it's going to be harder and harder to hire and retain staff. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next, our second speaker is Faith Walker.
Hello, my name is Faith Walker.
Welcome.
All right, I am a cleaner at Haywood Garage here, and I basically came to piggyback on what Kurt has said. Now, as a cleaner, I've been here going on a decade, and we always had a primary duty. Even though a cleaner, you have sweeping and you have general cleaning, but you always pick which job you will have as your seniority go up. Now they just have clean, so you don't know what to pick. All you know is days off. and it's very confusing. Now, as a cleaner, you have a sweeper, all they do is come in and sweep. Now, as a general cleaner, you general clean, and if a sweeper's not there, you step in and help sweep. That's what you're choosing. You do the squad cars, you do the sick buses. That's your primary job as a general cleaner because you're everywhere. As a sweeper, you're only hired on to sweep, and that's it. That's what is there, if you can help out. Now, it's not there, so it's causing a lot of confusion. And the thing about it is, when we come to work and we pick our primary job, we don't have to worry about what we have to do when we come in, because it causes chaos when you come in and you don't know what to do or what you're supposed to do or what is going on. Now, I think that also affects our mental health, because with everything going out there, you got people I know people who been on this job for 20 years, and all they have done is swept, because that's all they wanted to do. But now when you have somebody that comes in, they don't know if they're sweeping or general cleaning, and then it's inadequate training. They're not trained to do that. I've asked the question at a higher up, like, are you going to train everybody so they all know exactly how to do this work? It said, well, it's always been like that, and that is not true. Every pick, you got clean, you have cleaner, you have sweep, or you have cleaner. Once you just have cleaner by itself, it's general cleaner. And that's all I have, but I believe that it's really affecting us. It's affecting me because I don't know what to pick. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you both for your comments, and we'll make sure they get relayed. Now we are on to our other reports this evening.
Ma'am, excuse me. I work with Faith. I just got here. I don't know how he talked.
We had a sign up, but you're welcome to come up if you wouldn't mind sharing your name before we go.
My name is Barry Clark. And I've been working I was hired as a sweeper in 1997. And that's what I've always been doing. And you can check my record and stuff. And the way this thing works now, when I started working, there were like 6 cleaners. And the majority of those cleaners were either former bus drivers that couldn't bus drive at that time because they got disqualified, or their driver's license, or whatever the reason is, they couldn't remain in that job. And then they had to kind of, I don't know how they did it, but in any case, the doorway is open for the drivers. If something goes down with your job, and the mechanics as well. And I'm not sure how many other jobs in the company. And this goes all the way back to 97. Most of those people that trained me were mostly women at that time. There was like 3 women. They were either former drivers or, like I was saying, if they weren't a driver, there was something to do with company, and they couldn't work that job because they were disqualified some kind of way. They had to, and some of them wound up going back. Now, the thing is that I go back to the strike, the last strike. This type of thing came up before. They tried to eliminate some things and do all that shuffling. And that stuff is shooting the drivers in the foot. If something happens to a driver and they can no longer drive, they need them windows open, okay? Now, if you come in as a cleaner, I know a lot of people that over the years that would not have picked cleaner, but they picked to sweep. And some that picked cleaner over sweeper, okay? Now, that's what I'm saying. Why would they whoever thought this up, why are they trying to close out the windows for see, this thing starts like, you got the drivers, the mechanics, everybody, all the different jobs. Them jobs, you can branch out into those jobs. And if you don't have your CDL or whatever it is, you had it, and just like I once had my CDL, and the state made me withdraw it, told me I had to withdraw it because they sent me some letter. But in any case, when that happens, and you can no longer do that job because it says you have to have a CDL, if that cleaner thing is open for you, that's a plus. Okay, here's a sweeping job over here I can take, or I don't want to do that or this. The more options that everybody has, is better for everybody to leave them options open. And when I was hired, they told me I was a sweeper. That's why I took the job. I was hired off the street. But everybody else, when I was there, mostly were either drivers or something that couldn't drive any longer. And see, that's critical, to leave that window, And that's what I'm saying. If you cut that off, then you're messing up the drivers as well, because stuff happens with the drivers. Everything don't always go smooth with drivers. And there you go, your window. I was hired and they told me I would always be a sweeper, always. And that's why I took the job. So that's what I'm trying to say. Y'all need to leave the thing open and classify, leave it open so you got a choice here, And it just makes sense. Okay, that's all I want to say, y'all.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
And like I said, we'll make sure they get passed along to the right people. So now we're going to move on to reports. So first is MTS Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, council members. Very short report tonight. The council passed the new transitway policy on November 30th, and we continued discussion with project partners from around the region, a transit planning work group, which is comprised of staff, about 30 staff altogether, but cities, counties, transit providers, the University of Minnesota. We met with that group today and talked about details of the policy as well as previewing some of the next steps, both the TPP modification that'll address the planning side from a next step standpoint, and the upcoming procedures that will address the implementation goal. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good. Thank you, Charles. Any questions or comments from council members? All right. Seeing hearing none. General Manager Koistra.
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. I'm going to report again tonight on, provide just a brief hiring update. I believe the last time, or at least very recently, I reported on the November hiring where we had 97 people attend, and 88 of those made it to the next step, which was about 2.5 to 3 times more than what we had seen in previous months. In December, we had 80 people attend those events and 70 people moving on. So again, at least double what we had been seeing in months prior to November. So we're really encouraged by this. And I also mentioned that we are now able to go to the public for train operators after we have run out of applicants from other ATU members. We are allowed to go to the public for applications for train operators. And the posting just closed, and I believe the most recent numbers, we've had more than 60 applications, which is remarkable. So I'm going to not say that we've turned the corner yet, but I'm going to say we're hopeful we're turning the corner. We'll be watching early next year very closely, January and February. And this is all about us being able to provide more service because the restrictions on service and the reductions in service have been purely the result of loss of operators. And so this is hopeful news, and we'll continue to report on it in the coming months. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Gonzalez?
Just a quick question, because you mentioned that you had a number of people complete the first step. What are the steps in the process?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Gonzalez, they have to go through a fitness test. Some of them will have to get their CDLs. They'll have to go through the training, but unlike in past times, we are now paying people as they go through. Once they go through the basic fitness, we are paying people to be trained and for the CDL. So that's another big plus that we're in the past. It's taken so long between the time they first interview to the time they get their CDL, we lose a lot of them, and now we're hiring them through the CDL training. So I think it's a hugely positive step.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, any additional questions or Councilmember Chambliss?
Yeah, how many of those applicants are internal applicants?
Madam Chair, I don't have the
Not
number.
exact, but just, ballpark.
The applicants, very few applicants are internal for both the bus operator and the train operator positions. There were a few internal train operator position applicants. I have 5 in my head, but I don't want to be held to that. But most of them are external applicants.
Okay, so do they have an option to, if they don't get the train operator, to become a bus operator then?
Madam Chair, we've had that discussion because we have tremendous needs in the bus operator position. And we're having a discussion about if we have more applicants than what we need in the train operator side, whether we can persuade others to apply for the bus operator position.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions, comments? Councilmember Pacheco?
I just have a question here, Madam Chair. When we have people come and speak here, is there a report back? I mean, I listened to what the folks are saying, but I don't know how it's handled from there.
Typically, I would think that we will probably, that's why, we've got general manager here and some other members of Metro Transit in the audience, and we often respond back. Yes, and we've gotten at least one of them, the speakers emailed us, so that's how we kind of circle back. But thank you for asking. All right, additional questions, comments? All right, our next item was tech report, but Mr. Family didn't have a report this evening. So we'll move on to our consent business. There's one item on consent, so I entertain a motion to approve the item on consent.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the consent item is approved. Next, we're on to our first item of non-consent business, which is business item 2022-300, which is right-of-way acquisition loan partial repayment from City of Anoka. And we have Tony Fischer here to present. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and council members. Nice to be with you today. So we do have a specific transaction before you in this business item. We wanted to share a general background on the program just because it's something you don't get to see very often. So let's see. This is a program that was authorized by the legislature in 1982. It establishes a revolving loan fund, and the original funding for that was through the council's levy authority, but it's a revolving loan fund so that loans that are paid back are available for new loans generally. These are interest-free loans, and they are available to towns, cities, and counties in the 7-county area. These are for plans to improve state highways and principal arterials, and it allows for the purchase of highway right-of-way that is anticipated to increase in value due to either development or redevelopment of that property. This was originally intended for long new highway alignments such as Highway 610. We're not doing a whole lot of that anymore, so you'll see it more often in corners where interchanges are being proposed. And there was a financial evaluation done of this program in 2013. And while not each case saves the public money, it was generally found that the program does save the public money as intended. So with this program, we're usually trying to support projects in that 5 to 20 year time frame. Projects that might be sooner are usually programmed and have the funding available to purchase the right-of-way needed. And projects beyond 20 years present quite a bit of uncertainty and are things we try to avoid. Of course, we don't have a precise crystal ball on that time frame, but that's just kind of the guidelines we operate under. As I mentioned before, these are properties that are at risk of appreciating and causing increased project costs. The projects do have to be consistent with the transportation policy plan, and the projects, the improvements do need to be officially mapped, so that demonstrates that the specific right-of-way is needed and that the highway plans are known to a certain level. And then the current RELF requirements were adopted after that financial evaluation in 2013. So I just want to touch on some recent transactions so you can get a flavor of what's going on in the program. There have only been 2 loans given since 2017. In 2017 and 2021, 2 loans were given to Lakeville for a total of $1.8 million. At the beginning of the year, there were 52 outstanding loans. And I have to make a correction on that $47.1 million number. It's actually, there's a outstanding loan balance of $43.6 million. I'll try and get that corrected on the posting. But there was a $14.3 million cash balance as well. Since then, we're starting to see a number of loans being paid back. Richfield paid back 3 loans in front of the Best Buy headquarters for a total of $7 million. Anoka County made a partial repayment this year. Maple Grove made a partial repayment this year, and the city of Ramsey has recently repaid 1 loan in full. So there is, I just wanted to also mention, there's an upcoming business item you'll see somewhat similar to today's, and that is in the city of Ramsey for the highway improvements that are being worked on there. That will probably be here in January. So just to touch on the council's role, we don't come to the council for every transaction. So I've described 3 transactions where we do and 1 where we don't. For new loans, we do ask the council for approval. And then in 2 cases of repayments, we do ask for council approval, such as tonight. And that is the approval for partial loan repayment. And that's because the rest of the property isn't anticipated to be needed for the highway as was directed in the original loan. And then also in cases where the property is not needed at all, we would come to the council with that transaction. The cases where we don't come to the council is where the full parcel is needed, the full loan is going to be repaid, and that meets the expectations in the loan agreement and the restrictive covenants that we ask the local jurisdictions to file. So we don't come to the council for those type of transactions. That's assumed when the loan is given. So we're holding quite a few loans today, and those really fall into 3 buckets. We have $6.9 million on 12 loans in the city of Anoka, city of Ramsey, and Maple Grove that are expected to be repaid over this winter. We have $7.3 million on 20 loans in Lakeville and Bloomington that are still being held for future highway improvements. The Lakeville is the I-35 and County Road 50 interchange, and Bloomington is the 494 and 35W related improvements. So there's a substantial number of loans and fund balance out there that are not for parcels that are not expected to be needed for highway projects anymore. And you might have lived the history where highway improvements in the past, I think, were larger and less concerned with right-of-way needs, and we've tried to really limit those right-of-way needs in recent times. And so there's approximately $20 million in loans outstanding on 22 loans that we think we can have conversations with the cities, the counties, and MnDOT, and hopefully try to have those loans repaid. And those are to be sold at market value per statute. So just a sum of where we are today with this RELF program, you can see we've got about $23 million in cash funding. We've got about $20 million of those not needed loans, likely not needed. They require some discussions. There's just over $7 million in loans that we propose to hold for future highway improvements. And there's almost $7 million in loans that we expect to be repaid this winter. So that's a total assets in the program of $58 million. So some upcoming work that we have to do in MTS. We want to resolve these loans that we don't think the property is going to be needed for highway projects. We should really get those off the books. And then we want to start having a conversation about the program funds, because recently and anticipate in the future, the repayments greatly exceed the needs for new loans in the program, and there might be better uses for that. That is something that's going to require legislative changes, though, just because of the way statute's written. So that's the program. The business item before you is for one specific loan that was made to the city of Anoka. They are actually paying back two full loans. That's first and third, LO 703 and LO 906. They are paying those back in full, and as I mentioned earlier, those don't require council action because that is the intended purpose when we made those loans. LO 903, however, is only partially needed for the highway improvements, and so we're proposing a repayment of $244,173 on the almost $1.4 million loan. There is a small part along Highway 10 that will be needed for permanent trunk highway right-of-way, and there are strips along the local roads that are needed for easements for drainage and for utilities. So that's the business item before you today, is a repayment of $244,173 on that $1.4 million loan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions on this. So, like in the instance of Anoka, do you go to Anoka and say, we think that this is an interesting program? Do you go to Anoka and say, okay, we think it's time for that can officially be repaid to us? Do they come to us and say, we're done, here's your money, or which way does that work?
Yeah, in the case of project development where a city, county, or MnDOT is leading a highway improvement that requires the property, usually they're coming to us. In the cases where we don't think this is going to be needed for future highway improvements, we're going to reach out to the local partners and to MnDOT and have a conversation around that if our expectations match their expectations for the future. And we're going to want to be pretty certain before we try to put that property back on the open market.
Councilmember Pacheco.
While something's land banked, if you will, who pays the property tax?
There are costs that are borne by the local agency and costs that are borne by the council, and that is a cost that is borne by the city, the county, and school districts. Yeah, it's held by the city, so it's not taxable, is my understanding.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you said that then, I'm trying to find the right slide here, I can't find it, but that then it's sold at market value?
Correct. Yep, and that specific language is in statute, that if the property is no longer needed for highway purposes, it's to be sold at market value.
And where does that money go? Back into the fund?
Yes, it's a revolving loan fund, so.
Okay, so I can see that this fund could get really large really fast, or beyond the need.
Yeah, I think a couple of decades ago, you would have seen the opposite problem where there would have been maybe a request for a levy to induce funds into the program, but I think we're in the opposite scenario today.
Okay, interesting, thank you.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because some of this is new. I have two questions. One is regarding, you mentioned something about restrictions with the statute and that would require changes to the statute. What would that be? And then my second question is, I remember when Highway 610 was built, because I had purchased property at around that time, and I understand that traditionally the money is used for interchange right of way or easements or whatnot. But when they build a new freeway like that, who makes a request for like fencing along the freeway? Is that included in some of these expenses or loans?
So when a highway improvement is developed, if it's a state highway, it's going to have to meet the state standards, MnDOT's expectations, even if a local agency is delivering the project. And so whether fencing is required or
So
not is.
MnDOT makes that determination?
MnDOT can require it on their highways. If it's, there are very few cases where this wouldn't be a MnDOT road, and those would be principal arterials owned by local jurisdictions. But generally, yes, MnDOT would set the standards for that.
Okay, and then my other question was, I missed why there was a mention about a change to the statute.
Yeah, so Chair and council members, so as I mentioned, we are collecting substantial cash balance that we don't anticipate needing. And the statute really only anticipates those funds being reloaned for these type of projects. It doesn't anticipate other uses for these funds. So that's where if we see that there are better uses for some of these funds, that would, I think, require a statute change.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
And just a quick question about the properties no longer needed and then sold at market value. But if the property sold and the proceeds are higher than the loan amount, so they paid the original loan, what happens to the excess money that was acquired by the city when they sold the property at market value?
Chair and council members, that's a great question. So as I mentioned, some of the costs of the program are shared, and I think statute's pretty clear that if a property is sold on the open market to repay a loan and it exceeds the loan value, those go back into the Ralph program. It's really not intended to be a profit center for a local jurisdiction. Now, the opposite might be true if you can imagine in 2008, 2009. Property values were depressed. Quite a few Ralph loans were made before that time frame. If those come up for sale, if demolitions occur on appraisal, a current sale might not meet the loan value. So that's something that I think we want to talk more specifically about with the next business item in the city of Ramsey. It's going to become much more prominent part of that conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Just a quick comment, you'll note, like, we're going through budgeting right now and all of this. This is the levy associated with Ralph has not gone up in many, many, many years because of what we're seeing here. I'll also say that this program was a great asset for expansion of roads because you could look at situations where land came up and or you had a willing buyer or something like that. And I know, especially in the outer counties, there's a lot of interest in it. So I'm really thankful for having this overall presentation on it because obviously there's conversations potentially about what we do with this. So, all right, with that, then if there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-300.
Zarin moves.
Moved by Councilmember Zarin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Tony. Next, we're on to business items 2022-332, 333, and 334. And I believe we have Ed Petrie and Dennis Dworshak here for all. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Committee members. Ed Petrie, Director of Finance, Metro Transit.
Dennis Dworshak, Senior Manager, Revenue Operations.
Before we go into the business items, Chair, we thought we would just do a quick little presentation on a fare collection system overview. It's been a while since we've talked about fare collection system, and we use a lot of adjectives and those types of things about fare collection. We thought we'd just kind of go over quickly about the different types of fare collection we have, what we use on bus, light rail, commuter rail, BRTs, before we get into the business items. So Dennis?
Okay, as Ed mentioned, Madam Chair, Council Member, Ed mentioned, we're just going to go over a few of the fare collection system devices that we use, the primary devices that we use on the system that we have today. Fare collection system overview. We run under the regional fare collection policy. This includes both Metro Transit and MTS, MBTA, Southwest Transit, Maple Grove. We all use the same fare collection system, ticket vending machines and devices. We have a partnership with St. Cloud also. It's a quick partnership that we run with their North Star link there close to Big Lake. The fare collection equipment has two main categories. The first category is the off-board fare payments. Off-board fare payments is anything that the customers pay before they board, and there's ticket vending machines and validators, and the onboard fare payment system is the pay-as-you-board. As you notice, when you get onto the bus, you'll see the validators, and you'll see the fare boxes on the buses just as you board. Off-board fare payments, we have two different types of off-board fare payments. The first one is the large ticket vending machines that we have. The large ticket vending machines are the cubic ticket vending machines. They're full service, robust ticket vending machines that give change. You can add value to your smart cards. The smaller ticket vending machines that you see on the BRT's systems, they're a lot smaller, they're a lot less expensive. Just as reliable. They take the same fare payments. We take cash, we take credit, we take tokens, coupons, everything on both types of ticket vending machines. You'll see them both throughout the region. The onboard fare collection system, as I mentioned, you have we're phasing out the fare boxes. We have the fare boxes that we currently have. We purchased actually 30 years ago this year. They're no longer serviced, they're no longer purchased, they're no longer manufactured. Spare parts are very hard to find. So we're phasing in. We started phasing these in a few years back, and we're going to continue phasing them in. We also have the bus mobile validators that you see on the photo. Those are the bus mobile validators. As the customer boards, they will tag their go-to card, their smart card, and that will validate their fare. It's a very reliable piece of equipment that we have. If you remember the old footballs we used to have, they used to look like a football actually. These are the replacements for them. So we'll have three business items that Ed will present here in a couple minutes. The first one is for replacing the fare boxes. The second two are going to be related to the gold and the B-line ticket vending machines and the validators. The first one, as I mentioned, is the fast fare boxes. We've been phasing these in. We started phasing these in 2018. We had a $13 million sole source. This got us through about 65% of our current fleet that we have right now at Metro Transit and about 10% of the fleet for MTS. Today's request, we're requesting to approve a $12 million sole source, and this will complete the project. We phased them in right now. We have a mixed fleet of both old style and new style fare boxes. They really work well together, but we want to complete the project. This project will have about $5.5 million to complete Metro Transit and about $6.5 million to complete MTS's. And completion of this will complete our 10-year plan. The next one we're talking about is that Ed's going to mention here is the gold and B-line validators. These are the validators that are out on the platform. The same validators that you'll see on the rail systems and the BRTs throughout. These are ADA compliant. They have audio. They meet all the standards, and they're consistent with all of our equipment that we use in the system. And the last one is the ticket vending machines. These are the small ticket vending machines that I mentioned earlier. We're asking for a $3.3 million to outfit for the gold and the B-line. The gold and the B-line will be installed about late 2024 and early 2025. We need about a 20-month lead time for all technology now because of the high demand and technology requirements nowadays. So are there any questions on the ticket on the fare collection equipment that we'll be asking for in the next three business items?
Any questions or comments, council members? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Just so I can understand the difference between the large ticket vending machines and the small ones, are we replacing the big ones with the small ones?
Madam Chair. Council members, yes, we're going to continue to use the large ticket vending machines on the rail system. And the large ticket vending machines are very high volume, full service. The smaller ones on the BRT systems, we're going to continue to use the smaller ones on the BRT systems. And we also use them to supplement, like for a special event or a state fair. But we don't need all of the full service on the BRT system because of the low volume of customers.
So there's a difference in capacity between the big ones and the small ones?
Yes, the big ones are very fast. And the smaller ones are a little bit slower, but they still provide the customers an opportunity to use their cash, credit cards, tokens before they board.
And Madam Chair, committee members, one of the other things I'd also mention too is the cost differential. The cubic ticket vending machine is about $80,000. The parking on the smaller ticket vending machines are about $15,000 a piece.
Thank you.
All right, additional questions? Councilmember Pacheco.
Are they small enough that would tempt somebody to take a sledgehammer to them?
Madam Chair, council members, we do have some, during the riots, we did have some vandalism. We've had one of them was set on fire and one of them was pulled off with a chain. But out of 300 ticket vending machines, we have very little vandalism along the system. Very little. All of the, Madam Chair, council members, all of our ticket vending machines now we're installing have internal cameras where we can see real time. So that really does help, and the customers know that they're being recorded.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, we can move through the business items then.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'll go.
Go ahead.
One
Craig.
at a time, or do you
Yep,
want?
one at a time.
One at a time, okay. The first item is 2022-332, it's same week. It's a bus fare box replacement and equipment upgrade. The action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute a sole source contract with GenFare to provide fast fare bus fare boxes and auxiliary equipment with options and for future purchases until December 31st, 2028. In an amount not to exceed $12 million.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the business item.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Fredson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. On to the next
I'll
one.
proceed. The next item, 2022-333, same week. It's Cubic Smart Card Validators for the Gold and B-Line Bus Transit Contract 22P325 and 22P326. The action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute a sole source contract 22P325, 22P326 with Cubic for Smart Card Validators for use as off-board fare payments on the Gold and B bus rapid transit lines in an amount not to exceed $2.1 million.
Thank you, Ed. Entertain a motion to approve the business item.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Fredson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cummings. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, Madam Chair, the final item, 2022-334, same week. Contract to purchase ticket vending machines for Gold and B lines, contracts 22P333 and 22P332. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute a sole source contract 22P333 and 22P332 with Flowbird to provide ticket vending machines for off-board fare payments on the Gold and B bus transit lines in an amount not to exceed $3.3 million.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the business item.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Fredson, second by Councilmember Gonzalez. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. We're on to our last business item, which is business item 2022-337, a joint committee item. It's the Metro Green Line Extension 2022 Budget Amendment. We have Nick Thompson and Ed Petrie is staying with us. Welcome.
Madam Chair, committee members, Nick Thompson, Deputy General Manager, Capital Programs for Metro Transit.
And Ed Petrie, Director of Finance, Metro Transit.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk about a budget amendment tonight. If you recall, back in January of 2022, we updated the council about unexpected cost and schedule challenges that the Metro Green Line Extension or Southwest LRT was facing and would require additional funding and a revised opening date. At that time, we estimated the additional funding need was between $450 and $550 million, and that the revenue service date would be in 2027. Since that time, this past spring, this council has acted and added $50 million of federal formula funds to the project, and an additional $30 million in federal funds from Hennepin County that were given, that were dedicated to the project through federal legislation. And we've been working with the civil construction contractor to resequence the project. And in March, we reached a settlement agreement with that contractor that established a new project schedule. And that our contractor has been progressing the project on that schedule since then. While the construction was going on, we have been working with our partners, Hennepin County, very closely to find additional funding beyond what the $80 million that the council approved this spring. And this amendment represents a partial funding solution that will be considered by both the council and by Hennepin County this week. This amendment adds $111 million of council federal funds to the capital improvement plan for the Metro Green Line Extension Federal New Starts Rail Project. This includes $100 million of Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021, otherwise known as CARISA funding, and $11 million in federal funding from our CIP that is available from a series of projects that we were able to complete or will complete under budget and have remaining federal funds on those projects. The Metropolitan Council has already been awarded the CARISA funding. So what we will need to do is get an amendment from FTA. So the action tonight will, once completed through the council, we will request an amendment to the CARISA grant that we've already received. With the FTA approval, an additional budget amendment will come before the council for approval and amendment of these funds into the authorized capital program later this spring. The $11 million is accounted for in the existing ACP, and will be moved to the Metro Green Line project when those project closeouts are approved by FTA in a separate action. Including these federal funds from project closeouts and the Metro Green Line Extension project are, as I said, contingent on FTA grant amendments. We have been in discussions with FTA, and we expect to request those amendments shortly after the actions. As part of the funding solution we will be talking about tonight, Hennepin County Board also this week will consider action to increase their local contribution to the project by $100 million. These funds would be recognized then at a future Committee of the Whole meeting where we amend our grant agreement with Hennepin County. If the county acts to increase local funding for the project, these funds from the county and the action tonight will be brought forward with an amendment to this business item at the December 21st Committee of the Whole meeting in order to reflect the additional local funds and an amendment and extension of their contract with Hennepin County. Overall, there'd be $211 million of new funding that will be brought to the Green Line Extension project. And for consideration, it will increase the total project budget to $2.495 billion if these actions proceed. This project is identified in the CIP, and with this action and the pending action of the Hennepin County Board, we would increase our capital budget spending plan by $211 million to reflect the new spending forecast for the project. The additional $211 million in funds will allow construction of this project to continue into 2024 on the schedule that we've agreed upon with our contractors. We, as the project, will continue to try to manage our expenses and seek additional funding to fulfill the remaining needs that we identified earlier this year. And we'll continue to seek ways to reduce our budget and expenses on the project to get to a completion and get it open in 2027 for our customers. So the action before you tonight is that the Met Council authorizes the 2022 unified budget as amended in accordance with the tables attached to the business item. This is table 9 from the capital program, and it shows increase in the CIP and total budget for Metro Green Line Extension.
And with that, Madam Chair, I thought what we would also discuss this with the $100 million of using the CRISA funds. It does have an impact on our multi-year forecast, which we thought we would just quickly walk through that with you. I believe you are aware that we do a 5-year current year and the next 4 years multi-year forecast for the Transportation Division. We always go out to bienniums. The reason we do that is basically due to the volatility of expenses, but also volatility of revenues like motor vehicle sales tax. So our last forecast we did was in July 2022. That was after the February forecast and then after we had actuals for year-end 2021. At that point in time, we forecasted the Transportation Division had a shortfall of about $63 million in state fiscal year 27. So we had taken it, so balanced through years 22 through 26, deficit about $63 million in 27. State fiscal years 26, 27, then $63 million deficit. We recently received our recent forecast from the state of Minnesota on motor vehicle sales tax. I think you recall we get forecasts every February and every November. So we received our last forecast in November 2022. That adjusted our budget mainly due to the reduction in motor vehicle sales tax, which went down about just over $100 million, about $101 million over the period of time. So that changed our deficit going from a $63 million deficit down to about a $161 million deficit due to the volatility of motor vehicle sales tax. The next line here reflects then the movement of the federal funds, the CRISA funds, to the Gold Line expansion project. That has an impact of about $100 million, about $96 million in 26, or $4 million in 27. Overall, it's $100 million. Wes and I discussed this earlier. It's somewhat of an accounting artifact of what fiscal year it's hitting, because there's many other things that are adjusting also when we're using the federal funds, use reserves, those types of items. But it's still reflecting the $100 million reduction in state fiscal years 26, 27. That brings us down then to an adjusted forecast of about $102 million deficit in 26, 159 in 27 for the total of 261. One of the things I do want to point out though is no matter with this adjustment or prior to this adjustment, we're balanced in state fiscal years 22 through 25. It has the impact on 26 and 27. The total change is about $198 million between July to the adjusted November forecast, about $198 million. Quickly, I'll just go down some of those changes so you kind of have a feel for where those changes are coming from. First of all, as I mentioned, motor vehicle sales tax went down just over $100 million. We get the forecast every February, every November. We have incorporated that now into this forecast. That brought it down about $100 million. Once again, we will then receive our next forecast of February 2023. At that time, we will then reforecast this forecast again, once we receive the February forecast. The next item that does have an impact on this is county contributions. We've talked to you when we presented the budget for 2023 for the Transportation Division, also when we presented the county budgets. One of the challenges we're having in our light rail system mainly is due to increased expenses. We're seeing increased expenses on supplies, parts, maintenance. All those costs are exceeding our current master operating funding agreement, which increases inflation at 3.15%. We did have a request of the counties to reopen the MOFA, it's called, Master Operating Funding Agreement, to recognize these increased costs. We have not come to an agreement with them to reopen it as of this point in time. The original July forecast assumed we would have a reopening of the MOFA. Right now, with our proposed budget to the council and our forecast now, we're assuming it's not reopened at this point. That has a price tag of about $42 million from 2023 through 2027. Federal funds, that's reflecting about $100 million of federal funds in this $198 million. To offset all this, we've also had some adjustments on both the expense side and the revenue side. Originally, we had planned for 95% service levels on our bus system. Our proposed budget right now to the council is at 80%, and we adjusted slightly within our forecast here down to about 77%. It's a factor of not the inability to be able to hire operators. We can't hire operators to fill the position, so we can't get the service on the street. So we're reflecting this in our multi-year forecast and in our proposed budget. Also, the budget, as we've discussed, reflects 15-minute frequency on light rail versus the 10, and also then commuter rail. We're proposing through 2027 the current proposed budget. 4 trips in the morning, 4 trips out in the evening with special event service. Impacting all this on the negative side, so those are all expense savings. Impacting this on the revenue side is passenger fares. Because as you would assume, if you're adjusting service on light rail, commuter rail, whatever the case would be, that does impact passenger fares. It impacts the utilization of the ridership, the riders to use our service. It's like the analogy, if you build it, they will come. If the service starts getting reduced, customers are going to find other alternatives versus using transit. So that's one of the negative impacts of reducing the service, is the negativity on the passenger fares. All of that has about a positive impact of about $45 million, the savings offset by the passenger fares. That brings us down to about a net reduction, like I stated, about $198 million between July and November. Once again, about $100 million of that is motor vehicle sales tax. Just over $40 million would be the 50% for the state, $100 million of the federal funds, and then offset by $45 million of net expense savings. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd stand for any questions on the mathematics of the numbers.
Yes, thank you, Nick. All right, questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thanks for presenting this information. I really appreciate the efforts to be proactive in sharing us what the forecasted changes are and coming up with a good faith effort and proposal so that the Green Line Extension project can be completed and the contractors can be paid, which is the right thing to do. So we didn't anticipate the inflation and some of the other things that happened, but it's our responsibility as an agency to plan and move things forward.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this explanation. It's and being able to translate it into understandable form, because it's very complex. I know that. I think, you know, the Green Line extension has been in the planning, as are all of the things that we do for many, many, many years, and it will be transformative for not just the cities on the extension, not just the county, but the entire state. I mean, this is something we're looking not to build for today or tomorrow, but we're looking for, 50 years out, our kids, our grandkids, their kids, and this will be an incredible asset. And when we plan these things, we do the best that we can, and trying to figure out the financing for something that's going to go out for many, many years with so many variables that are beyond our control. No one would have predicted our pandemic or what that would do to the situation. Nobody would have, and all the after things that then fall into place as far as the up and the down and so forth. So this is helpful to see. I think, I appreciate that our staff has done so much in the financing of this and in coming to an agreement with our partners, hopefully to move this forward. I think continuing to get this through 2023 and into 2024 and give us some opportunity to continue to work on all of this is huge. I think it would be interesting to look at the numbers from all of the development along the line that are impacted by, yes, these are numbers that we don't like to see, but the development on the line is unbelievable. I mean, you can hardly argue with that. And so I appreciate this. I appreciate what has been done. I appreciate working with all of our partners. I appreciate what the project office has done. I mean, there are so many people who have been involved in trying to make the best of all of this. And so thank you for your presentation. It's helpful to understand the numbers and then again, put it in context of the big picture and what this will mean for all of us, because this is it's a system. It isn't just a line or just a bus route or just an anything. It's part of a large system. So thank you for your work on this.
Nick?
Madam Chair, committee members, as a preview, Wednesday, we will be providing a comprehensive overview of the project status, including a lot of information about the development that has went along with this project. So just a little teaser for Wednesday's council meeting. I think you've seen a preview. It is quite impressive, the amount of development that has occurred along with this project.
I look forward to that.
Very good. Additional comments? Councilmember Fredson?
Thanks. Just to add on to what Councilmember Cummings said, I mean, the reality is we have a problem. We're doing our best to solve it. I think this illustrates us working with Hennepin County to be, good faith partners in coming to some resolution. I think that the fact that we're utilizing some so-called leftover monies illustrates that most of our projects do get done on time and under budget. And then I think the larger takeaway for me, I mean, just the MVEST, the impacts of the MVEST coming in below expectation again, I'd say largely because of supply chain issues and less, vehicle sales. And, this is not unique to transit. I mean, if you look at road and bridge funding and, at some point, we're gonna be bringing home less resources for roads and bridges from the gas tax. And so I think that one takeaway for me would be that we just need, substantial structural change in terms of transportation funding in the state. And hopefully we will figure out a way, the legislature will figure out a way to fund the kind of system, whether it's transit or roads and bridges, that Minnesotans deserve.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. As a historian, brings back to mind the same discussions in the 1870s about cost overruns and whether or not we needed a train line to Fargo. I mean, I guess some people might say that without the railroad going through Fargo, the city will not exist, and that might be a good thing. I mean, I don't agree with that. But those are the discussions that we're having right now are ones that are reflected in history in the last 150 years. So it's good that we are thinking ahead of the investments that we're making now are going to have an impact that lasts at least 150 years down the road. So we have to think creatively and proactively. But just quickly on the CARISA funds that we're redirecting, I was wondering if we had already earmarked those for something else before we're moving them to the green line or not. I don't recall those discussions.
Chair, committee members, I guess what I would say is originally that was planned in our July 2022 forecast.
Okay.
We had that was $100 million in that forecast, and now it's being redirected to the capital program. I noted it as an exception or an adjustment.
So they were not itemized already for specific projects?
That is correct. They were not. They were not.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just add that it has the use of the CARISA funds has the effect of bringing the deficit forward into state fiscal year 26. We're showing state fiscal years here because that's how we've been speaking with the legislature. That it has the effect of bringing the deficit into state fiscal year 26 rather than in 27.
Okay.
It just brings it forward. It's the same cliff. It's the same size cliff. It starts happening earlier as a result of this. But we're still, as Mr. Petrie mentioned, we're still balanced through state fiscal year 25 under any scenario.
Thanks.
Okay, additional questions or comments? All right, I just have a quick one before we move on to voting. I want to thank all of you for the presentation and for the information, and I also appreciate the very thoughtful comments from all the council members. I think everyone's understanding the importance of this and kind of building something that goes into the future. This agreement is really critical because the Metro Green Line extension is more than a train. It's the largest infrastructure project in the history of the state of Minnesota. It provides long-term benefits, not just to the region, but to the entire state. And those long-term impacts really outweigh outweigh these short-term challenges that we're living through in real time right now. This funding allows this project to continue on its current schedule through 2024. And while this is a major step forward, we will continue to work with our partners to address the remaining funding gap into the future. We're really grateful for the financial commitments of Hennepin County Metropolitan Council and the federal government that made this agreement possible. For my fellow council members, I think Nick alluded to it, you'll be seeing this next at the full council on December 21st, and I really encourage you all to attend. So if there's no other questions or comments, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-337.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cummings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Thank you. All right, so that concludes our business for tonight. I would say business item 1 can go on consent. Business items 2 through 4 are all same week, so they will go non-consent to the council on Wednesday. And as I mentioned, item number 5 will go to the full council on the 21st. Unfortunately, you have 8 business items to listen to me ramble through on Wednesday, so my apologies in advance. With that, we can move on to our information. Our first information is the Bus Maintenance Technician Apprentice Program. We have Abel Mumbai and Aaron Krosky. Oh, Abel, are you on your own this evening?
Yep,
Welcome.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for having me. Aaron, as you can see, is not here. There was a family emergency that he wasn't able to join us. So I will give you the update on the presentation. So part of the reasoning for this update, or at least for this program that I'm going to give an update, is to try to help us meet the challenge of having mechanics, shortage of mechanics every year. So we have different avenues that we've tried to do, one of which we've had different training programs and also normal recruitment, such as going to job fairs and normal HR recruitment. So what I'm giving you an update today is a program that is a registered apprenticeship program for bus mechanic. For years, we've had one for the operators. Now we have one for the bus mechanics. So how did we, what took place to get to where we are now? So what we had done with the help of the ATU, we formed what is considered a joint apprenticeship committee, which is, by the way, Kurt that was here earlier is part of that joint committee, and then other people as well. So that committee, after forming it, we reached out to Minnesota Department of Labor and found out what we needed to do to be able to have a training program, in-house training program. So as you can see on the timeline, in March, that apprenticeship committee was established. Come to September, we were able to have it registered by the state Department of Labor. Moving forward, so as I stated earlier, the people involved into the joint apprenticeship program includes Ryan, who is the ATU president, then Kurt and Raphael, and on the other side is myself, maintenance manager, and the fleet supervisor. I'll talk about the role of the JAC a little later into the presentation, but these are the people that met together to establish these requirements. So in other words, the JAC's responsibility was to reach out to the state and find out what did we need to do to have an in-house training program. The state provided the guidelines, and then we built the training schedule based on that. And also after that, we were able to register the program to the state. So the overall overview of a goal, the intent was for us to be able to utilize the requirements which the state provided of 6,000 hours, which is roughly 3 years. And the goal of recruitment was to recruit 50% internal and 50% external. So this slide here shows a little bit of external recruitment, as you can see. Then on here, 15 of those were identified as women, 77 as men, and then a breakdown of racial demographic over there. This is specifically to external. And all those on this page here shows the people internal. So external the program has 14 spots. In other words, we have 14 opportunities. 7 of those are internal, 7 are external. So the seven external that I showed there, then internal, what we did was we offered this opportunity to helpers, cleaners, as a means for them to be trained internal to become mechanics, and then later on to move to the ranks of mechanics. One point of note that I'll put on here is we had over 100 internal people that were interested. And after going through different phases, we came down to, as it stands today, we have the 7 identified, and then we have 2 that are potentially on the waiting list. So as you can see here, how did we select these? As I stated earlier, the primary goal was helpers and cleaners to become mechanics. And the way it would work in the first year, they'll be paid as helper. Second year, they'll be paid as skilled helper, which means just in those that are coming in as cleaners, they'll bump in pay to meet the job class that'll come into the program. And then the third year, then they will go into job classification as a mechanic. They'll be able to work alongside other mechanics at that point. So part of what went in to get to this point is once the 2 groups were identified, were brought together, both internal and external. There was what we considered as a readiness phase that was put in place to help identify who had the skill, who had the commitment before they're officially into the program. And as you can see on the picture there, on the top picture, that shows one of the instructors that will be in the group, and then on the bottom, the person in yellow there, that's a mechanic that was trying to give them an overview. If you're a mechanic, this is what it'll take before they sign up for it. Picture here is a mentor. So part of the program is you have instructions that'll be conducted in the new garage in the North Loop. And once they complete the instruction phase, they'll be assigned to the garage for whatever subject they're working on. And once they're at the garage, they'll have the peer-to-peer mentors, people that will show them how to do the repair, how to do the correct repair, and making sure what they learn in class translate when they go to work on it. So this is a picture of one person that applied as a mentor and who would be instrumental in helping them with the program. So here, as I stated, so this is a full, completely in-house training. Like I said at the beginning, the state approved our standards, which means our schedule and what we're going to be teaching. So our instructors will be in-house, and the people will have the opportunity to train as a mechanic without having to have full-time work and full-time going to college. So in other words, what I'm trying to say, this is a great opportunity that will enable us, or at least enable people that will be in the program to be able to do the education that would meet the requirements of an entry to a mechanic. So being as a registered apprenticeship program, what they get at the end, they get a journey person card that is equivalent, that is recognized not only in Minnesota, but nationwide as having been trained in meeting the requirements of a mechanic. So we'll be able to have not only that, but also give a means for the helpers and cleaners, as I stated, to get into the mechanic. And if they decide to take other programs, because we have other programs that enable them to go become a supervisor and moving on. So that is that. With that, I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you, Abel. Questions, comments from council members? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What a great program. This is terrific. My question for you is, do you also have women who will be mentors in addition to men?
So I'll find out whether or not women's have applied. So part of a mentor, what we have done is we put out to all the garages, and people have to apply to become a mentor. So as how many have applied, I don't have the full count, but I'll be happy to share what those counts are.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just?
Yep, go ahead.
Just, that's great. I would be interested in the follow-up, just because I think it's really, really important to also have women as all first. So thank you for that.
Okay, additional questions, comments? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Just a quick comment. In my previous life, I used to work at the Department of Labor and Industry and had some contact with our apprenticeship programs back then. And I do remember very clearly listening to the folks that graduated from some of the other apprenticeship programs, such as the pipe fitters and electricians, and hearing their testimonies of how the training and the experience that they received on those other programs really changed their lives. So it's not just the matter of acquiring skills so they can find a job, but also the contacts that they make, the networking that they develop, self-confidence, etc. So apprenticeships are actually a life-changing experience for many of the folks that go through this. So this is a great program, and I've seen it work in so many other settings. So I'm just thrilled that we're having that here at the Met Council too.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Is there a tuition that comes with this opportunity? And then if so or if not, if somebody completes the program, can they just go somewhere else? Or is there a requirement that says you complete our program, and if you stay for this long, you get this? Or anything like that could make sure that the people stay?
Madam Chair and council members, so as far as tuition, there is no tuition because they are actually being paid as they're training. So one of the benefits, if you look at, I went to college while I was working full-time, so I do appreciate this opportunities for them identifying that we're offering them the opportunity to train and be paid as part of their training. So they're full-time employees, they're going to class being paid as employee, and then they go to do hands-on as employees, which takes away the barrier for people that can't afford. Right. If you're enrolled into the program, that takes away the ability of, well, I don't have money to pay for it. The other thing too, to add to your point, we have program tools. In other words, we have tools that are assigned to the program. So when they're coming in, instead of having to come up with 2 boxes and money, there will be basically, we'll rent them the 2 box for the first 2 years. So we'll remove that barrier as well. And also with they need textbooks, computers and all that, we have that. So while they're in the program, they have all the tools. Not only are we making sure that they don't have to go take a second job while they're in training, because they've been paid while they're doing the training, but also we're making sure that we have, they have all the tools they need, they have all the books they need. As far as the requirements of why should they stay, well, one, we hope they stay because we're a great place to work for, and also, public service, they believe in what we're trying to do. The only requirement that we have is, they have to be, while they're in the program, there's other requirement. The main requirement is while they're in the program, they have to be in bus maintenance because of bargaining language and how we have to handle that if something happens. But second, also, once they receive their journey person card, there's a requirement of how long they have to stay within bus maintenance if they're employed here.
Councilmember Sterner and then.
Thank you, Chair Barbara. One of my questions was, I know a lot of diversity, looking at numbers, but reaching out to people having problems with homelessness or former felons or people with addictions as possible, people that would work for this program.
So Madam Chair and member of council, actually Aaron that was supposed to be with me here, they did the outside outreach. So the page that I'd shown earlier there, but I'll find out to see how they reached out. But this part of it, there was workforce development, did the external outreach, and that was as far as whether or not they reached out to homeless and other people, I can find out, but I don't know exactly I don't have that information with me.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I'm sure you guys will be back here before us again, so.
Yes.
You can always bring that. Councilmember Fredson.
Thank you, Chair. As some of you may know, for my day job, I work for Construction Workers Union that runs the largest apprenticeship program for the construction trades in Minnesota. And so I've witnessed the transformational work that the training centers do. And I think it's important to note that, apprenticeship programs are joint management and labor programs. And I know that ATU is in the room here tonight. And I just want to recognize ATU and obviously Met Council for this partnership and hope it's successful. Hope we learn from our last round and this programs like this can create careers and make a big difference in people's lives. So,
Thank you for your comments. All right, any additional comments? All right, well, thank you very much. Clearly, you've got a group of fans here, so we appreciate you coming and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you.
And next, we're on to our last information item of the night. It's Better Bus Stops update with Paul Lamb and Barry Farrington. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm Barry Farrington. I'm here with Paul Lamb. We're with Engineering and Facilities to give you a Better Bus Stops 2022 highlights. Better Bus Stops is Metro Transit's commitment to improving the bus stop experience. We provide and maintain transit shelter at busier bus stops. We look for at least 30 daily boardings to consider adding a shelter. And Better Bus Stops began in 2014 in response to community concerns about shelters lacking in racially diverse neighborhoods. So at that time, we made focused capital improvements. And as we've expanded to a program that's system-wide, we annually measure the availability of shelters, shelter lighting, and shelter heaters. And we do that with a racial equity lens. We use demographic data and transit ridership data, and we see that Black, Indigenous, and people of color continue to have equitable access to shelters, light, and heat. I also wanted to note the maintenance. Our facilities maintenance team takes care of over 800 bus shelters, nearly 80 BRT stations, 44 rail stations, transit centers, and park and rides. So they do the routine cleaning as well as responsive work such as repairing damaged glass, replacing shelters, fixing heaters, benches, cleaning up messes, clearing snow, and solving all those unique issues. Better Bus Stops is a commitment to accessibility. We do that through paving the boarding area that meets the bus's front door and paving the connection to pedestrian connections. So I'm going to highlight 3 programmatic improvements, and then Paul will be talking about the capital improvements of this year in a pilot project. So programmatic improvements are the tools and the behind-the-scenes business processes we need to do this work. So first, we have these new guidelines for prioritizing accessibility improvements at bus stops. This is an agency goal to move the needle on accessibility. So we need at least 5x8 flat surface that connects to a sidewalk or other pedestrian connection. Every year we build boarding pads. We work with developers and roadway authorities on this. We have over 10,000 bus stops in the transit system, and we'd like to reach a point where we have a to-do list for bus stop accessibility. What do we need to fix? So these, we now have this method for prioritizing from highest to lower. And so a high priority bus stop, for example, would have at least 5 people using the bus stop every day. And we see other data demonstrating that people with disabilities are using the bus stop. So it's important to note that the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, applies to all bus stops. But in the near term, we want to focus our capital investments where it has the most impact for customers. So these guidelines are a starting place to start to create that system-wide to-do list, but we also need to know where our bus stops are ADA deficient to generate that. So that's the second programmatic improvement I just wanted to talk about. We don't yet have a system-wide data set on bus stop conditions. This last summer, we had a bus stop accessibility intern go out and collect data on over 900 bus stops over 3 months. Combining that data with past information that was collected, we now have a pretty good start for understanding bus stop conditions in the network, from St. Louis Park to Woodbury, from Brooklyn Center to Bloomington. We're starting to collect that data, and that's important to understand the nature of compliance with the ADA and improving bus stop experience. So finally, the third programmatic improvement we've been working on this year is to develop a new database and application to help us manage information about our transit shelters and customer facilities, as well as that accessibility data. Our existing system for managing information is about from year 2000, so it's just not keeping up with what we need to do. And you might not think about it, but our shelters are in a very dynamic environment out on the street. We don't just place them and leave them, of course. Beyond maintaining them, sometimes we have to remove them, we have to put them back. And today this information is stored in different places, and it's rather manual to make sure that a removed shelter gets back where it goes. It can take a little longer than we'd like. So this new system is going to consolidate our information, get our data talking to each other, and help us have more freedom in making more efficient business practices. And so we're very excited that we have a new business systems analyst who's leading this project, as well as leading other innovations in that behind-the-scenes manner.
Thank you, Barry. And I'm here to talk about the capital improvements that we were able to accomplish this year. Through a variety of different construction projects, both Metro Transit and Met Council led, and working with roadway authorities and developers, we were able to add 25 new shelters to bus stops that previously hadn't had them before. We were able to replace 33 shelters that were old and at the end of their useful life to provide a better condition waiting environment for our customers. And also we were able to add 18 boarding pads, so those minimum 5-foot by 8-foot paved areas that Barry was talking about to improve accessibility and get passengers out of mud or snow as they're waiting for buses. And we were able to add heat or light at 34 shelters that didn't previously have those. We were able to modify benches in 70 shelters to allow better accessibility into the shelter. We took shelters that had full-length benches along the entire back wall, and we're able to get 70 of those cut in half so that people in wheeled devices couldn't get entirely under the roof of the shelter. And then, in addition to those activities, we supported D-line station construction by putting some temporary shelters out during construction and removing those, or we're in the process of removing those now that D-line started. The capital improvements that I talked about does not include D-line. Those are all just standard regular route bus shelter construction, or improvements, I should say. But they do include Hennepin Avenue shelters. We've been working with the city of Minneapolis for, I think, about 5 years now, and coordinating with their reconstruction on Hennepin Avenue in downtown Minneapolis from Washington to 12th. In working with them, we're able to get 8 larger BRT-style shelters. By the end of this month, they will have light and heat as well as real-time signs. About half of them have light and heat right now. Our contractors run into some supply chain issues that have kind of pushed some of the electrical components off, but we're still diligently following up with them on that. The real-time signs should be going into testing next week. And then finally, these shelters will be used for regular route service now, but they'll also set us up in the future for future E-line BRT service that'll be running on the corridor. And then finally, we implemented a pilot project this year of solar lighting on shelters. We've looked at this previously and done deployments years ago where there was a pole next to the shelter with a solar panel and a battery, and then underground conduit to the shelter. Since then, the technology has changed where components have gotten smaller and more affordable. So we've been looking at solar lighting to be able to more faster, efficiently, less expensively, and with less disruption, put light at locations or at shelter locations without having the disruption of construction and trenching conduit underground. So we deployed that at 19 shelters, mostly in North Minneapolis, Brooklyn Center, and Brooklyn Park. And we'll be evaluating those, especially over the winter, and seeing how they work and how they hold up during cold weather conditions that might affect batteries or other components before moving on to a larger deployment. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Sterner.
Thank you, Chair. I just was wondering, with all the visibility and the accessibility and the disability acts, how often do you go and, present in front of the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee? Is that an annual thing, or have you done that before?
Chair and members of the committee, we go once a year with this level of update, a little more detailed actually, preceding our presentation to you. And then, we went back in, it was November, that feels like a long time ago. And then if there's a specific project, we would go. But for this level of update, it's once a year.
Thank you.
All right, additional questions, comments? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Just a quick question. Looking at the accessibility improvements, are we going to make sure that those are incorporated in any future constructions, plus retrofitting the existing ones, or just do the ones where we have the most usage?
Chair and members of the committee, I think the question is, so for our shelters that we have now, when we replace the shelter, there's a design done to ensure it's accessible.
And that's going to be incorporated into future shelters? Okay.
Yes, when we add a shelter, we ensure that it's accessible.
All right, thank you.
All right, additional questions, comments? It's a great program. It's always nice to see the updates and to see, I love that you're trying out the solar options. I know that wasn't an easy thing to come up with to work in our environment. So, but yeah, I think I just love getting these updates because you really see the thoughtfulness into making it, really accessible and inviting to riders. So we appreciate the work. So, all right.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. And with that, I have a couple of quick announcements before we adjourn. Just wanted to let you know, and to anyone listening and watching, there were a couple of audio and slide glitches throughout tonight. So if anyone has any questions who's viewing this virtually, just reach out to one of us and we'll make sure we get you any information that might have been missed. And then this is our last meeting at Haywood for the year. The West Siders are all a little sad, but East Siders are smiling. And so we are moving back to Robert Street in January. So with that, we also changed recording secretary. So thank you to Becky and all of her hard work. Very, very much appreciate it. And if you didn't get it from all that, we're not having a meeting on December 26th. So Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you all, and we are adjourned.